You're listening to the Faith and Business Podcast with me, your host, Elle Edwards, the Mindset Geek from the Faith and Business Playground, here with Bible-friendly brain gymnastics to help you be joyful for Jesus in 2019. Welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast, and at the time of recording and releasing this, a brand new week. I hope January is treating you kindly thus far. Unless, of course, you're listening to this in May, which would be kind of weird, but also quite funny. In this week's episodes of the podcast, so we have 2 episodes coming up, but this week in the Mindset Minute and also in the podcast, we are thinking about missions and why and how you show up in the world. So you might have already, if you listen to any of the Mindset Minutes or these podcast episodes, you will have already heard me talk about my own personal mission to help reclaim Christianity in the 21st century, which I know is big and bold. Funnily enough, I did something stupid to my hip over the Christmas holidays. I went on the dodgems and got whacked a bit hard, and we're assuming that's what happened. But as a result, I had a poorly hip. And so I had an appointment with a physio last week. And she said, are you working today? I said, I work from home. Oh, what do you do? That's always a tough question for me because I mumble over my words and internet stuff and writer and wordy. However, I then talked about reclaiming Christianity. He went, I think you've got your work cut out for you. And I had to laugh and agree because it's true. On my own, I can't possibly reclaim Christianity. But I really do feel this burden for us together to be these beacons of light and delight and joy in the world. Because for the longest time, I wouldn't mention that I was a Christian. I'd find another phrase. I'd say things like Jesus geek or, Jesus friend or something that felt a bit less sort of meh, because people have been hurt by the church. And you and I are here, I believe, to be antidotes for that, to show up shining beacons of light and love for people who, God loves everybody. Some people, though, have been hurt by the church or they've been hurt by other Christians because some not great stuff has happened in God's name. I mean, Paul himself did it. Although he was a bit misguided, he was going around, when he was Saul, he was going around killing all the Christians, and he genuinely believed he was doing God's work. So stuff is happening in the world in God's name, and it's not great stuff. But you and I can be beacons of love and joy and an antidote to that. And so my mission, it's always been my mission, but my bigger, bolder, being more noisy about it mission in 2019 is to actually do that work. And so all of this week, we're going to be thinking about that and talking about that. And what does that actually look like? It reminds me of a conversation I had in Cardiff airport back in 2014. July 2014, I went to America for the first time. And I've got that song in my Proclaimer's head in my song now. Song in my head even. Anyway, but July 2014, I went to America for the first time. And on the way home, I was telling this guy in the airport because he asked, and he was a Jesus geek too. And he said, well, that's great. How are you going to do that? And it's a fair question because me on my own, I can't possibly reclaim Christianity. It's not a one-person job. It's an us-person job. It needs all of us coming together. And so that was a challenging question. And he didn't mean it negatively. He wasn't trying to be confrontational. He seemed genuinely interested. Well, how are you going to do that? How are you going to make that happen? And I started with an answer in the subsequent months, and then I got distracted, which is another part of my story. But I'm back. And this work as we move forward does need you and I together. Because there are people in your little corner of the world who you are here to love on. There are people in my corner of the world who I'm here to love on. And we might not meet the same people. I love on people I come into contact with on a good day. There are times when I get it wrong, but hopefully on those good days, on those days when I'm full to the top and, being that real made in the image of God person, same for you as well. And so really it's about coming together. And it's about encouraging each other. It's about supporting each other. It's about acknowledging that sometimes it's not always easy. That, I think, is the very first step. And I write about reclaiming Christianity and I talk about reclaiming Christianity, but it's not like as if we're going to do a big, bold internet campaign or, we can somehow, there's not like a building to storm. There's no country to take over. Instead, it's about day by day actions. It's about, I guess, first of all, choosing that, yes, I want to be a part of this. Yes, this is important to me too. And then showing up day after day after day. And that's where I come in, because my brand of what I do, I call it's resilience, I guess is the proper name for it, but I call it bounce back ability, because there are days when things are going to feel tough. There are days when you don't want to. There are days when you get it wrong, because there are days when I don't want to, and there are days when I get it wrong. And I've got to believe it's not just me. And so with the Faith and Business Playground and with the Faith and Business podcast, it's about giving you those tools that you need to bounce back. When life happens, when you have a bit of a tough day, helping you get back up again. That's what I'm here to help with, to help you be more joyful day to day. And the episode on Friday is about being joyful for Jesus in 2019. The working title for it, because it hasn't been recorded yet, the working title for it is, Are You Ready to Be Joyful for Jesus in 2019? That's what it's about. And we're going to be digging into just a few of those little tools and tricks and little hacks that I have for you to help you do that. But I wanted first in this episode just to lay a little bit of the groundwork, I guess, to explain why we're doing this thing. Why are we bothering? Because I don't know your journey to Jesus. Oh, look, more alliteration. I love alliteration. It's great. But I don't know how you got where you are today. But I do believe that life is a journey. And I grew up in the church. I grew up in a house, but my parents are both Christians. And so I grew up in that environment where we went to church every Sunday, and I knew the gospel. I knew about Jesus dying on the cross. But it wasn't until I was 12 when I was scared out of hell, for want of a better expression. There was this really staunch Welsh preacher, William Williams or Morgan, or he has a really daft name. I don't know why anybody would name their child, give them the same first name as they did last name. It's quite peculiar to me. And I don't remember, but it was something like that, William Williams or something like that. And all I remember from this, it was a Friday night, and the church that we went to at the time had a youth meeting, and sitting there, have you prayed the prayer? And being really kind of like, it was really full on. And it suddenly hit me that day, oh, I actually haven't done that. Like, I'd gone along and I knew about the Jesus stuff. I knew about Jesus dying on the cross for me and all that sort of thing, but I'd never prayed the prayer. And if I didn't pray the prayer and I died that night, what would happen to my soul? And it was absolutely terrifying. And so that night I did pray the prayer. However, it wasn't until I would say maybe 12 years later, that I started being loved into heaven. So instead of, I was scared out of hell in when I was 12, loved into heaven when I was about 24. And I say about because it was a journey. This is probably a story for another time, but I'll give you the abridged version. So having prayed the prayer when I was 12, I went through a little phase for a few years of being quite evangelical. So every Saturday, the church that I went to, we'd go and stand in the middle of the town centre, and there'd be a guy with a guitar, and we'd sing Jesus songs, and somebody would preach over this big microphone and blast the message of the gospel to poor unsuspecting shoppers for half an hour on a Saturday afternoon. I used to go to that, and so I was really evangelical. I got baptised, all the sort of stuff that you're meant to do. And then I became a teenager, and I stopped talking to God, and I met the guy who is now my husband, who is, at the time of recording, he used to call himself an atheist. I think he's probably agnostic. He's not sure. God's definitely mellowed him over the years. But I say I went off the rails. Like, I didn't start doing anything terribly horrific, but I definitely stopped talking to God. And it wasn't until I had our first daughter when I was 24 and started going to church again, mostly for a bit of company, I got to be honest, because my husband's a policeman and he used to work shifts. And if you've had children, you know that they can cry and they can be quite hard work. And so my parents were going to a different church at the time. They were going to church. And so I started going to the church that they went to for a bit of company. But fast forward, God did his thing. And I it actually happened because of a Bible weight loss course that I did, which sounds a bit weird. I've always been a curvy girl, and I don't remember what year this happened, but I did a Bible weight loss course. And for the first time ever, this revelation that God was interested in every aspect of my life, including what went in my mouth. That was basically the premise of this Bible weight loss course, was that if you were tempted to eat stuff that, when you weren't hungry, you could ask God to help you. And he would. And I lost some weight and all the rest of it. But as a result of that course, I started talking to God more, and I started reading the Bible, and God did his thing, and I was loved into heaven when I was about 24, 25. And I can only pinpoint it at that time frame because I was 24 when I had our eldest daughter. But it was a journey. And so the idea that we pray a prayer and then we're suddenly magically fixed, and then when we die we won't go to hell, that's great and all, but what about here and now? Because Jesus talked about the kingdom of heaven being here right now, and he talked about himself, like the kingdom of heaven was here because he was there. But this idea that we can bring heaven to earth in some way, in the way that we show up each day. And I understand and I get that there's all this stuff way over there somewhere that will happen, end times stuff. Like, I'm using inverted commas there because there's all that stuff that, I got to be quite honest, I don't give a lot of thought to that because I don't really understand a lot of Revelation. And some of the pictures there are quite daunting. And you can lose hours and days to trying to understand it all. So I would rather focus on the bit I do know. So for me, it's about Jesus, and then everything else, it will get figured out in the wash. And maybe that's a bit of a naive way of looking at it, but it's got me thus far. However, this idea that, yeah, that stuff will happen at some point, but does that mean that as life stands at the moment, God's not interested? I don't think so. I do believe that we are history, his story. We are here to be part of this world's story. And that means how we show up on a day-to-day basis. And that, in essence, is the work that I am here to do with the Faith and Business Playground in 2019, to help and inspire and equip you to be this person who is full to the top with God's love, so you can go out there and be joyful for Jesus in 2019. Because I'm not going to love on all 7 billion people on the planet on my own. That would be completely crazy and a little bit narcissistic to believe. Instead, it's all of us coming together. We can do this collectively as a community. And so I guess really my call to action in this episode is, if this is something that resonates with you, if this sounds like something, yeah, totally, I want to help bring heaven to earth too. If you're not already a part of the community that I'm building, I would encourage you to join us. I've got a free community called the League of Brilliance, and I'll put a link to it in the show notes. Come and join us. And yes, I do. There's the paid coaching stuff too. If you're a businesswoman who then wants to use these tools and help build your business at the same time as your life and your faith, yes, there's paid stuff too. But I'm not even worried about that right now. What I really want to do right now is what I'm interested in most is finding the people like you maybe, for whom this is a good fit. Because I don't know who I don't know yet. And so if that sounds like you, then I would encourage you to come and join us. The easiest way to do that, probably, if you go to theleagueofbrilliance.com, it will redirect to the Faith and Business Playground website. I have lots of URLs because that's just how I roll. But everything is done under the umbrella of the Faith and Business Playground. But the leagueofbrilliance.com will redirect you to the place where you need to go to come and join us in the League of Brilliance. And you can get to know me, and you can get to know other Jesus geeks, and we can build this together. I don't exactly know what this will look like. I talked in last week's episode about why I like setting quarterly goals. Quarterly goals are much easier for me personally. I've got the big overarching picture, but quarterly goals are easier because I don't know really what's going to happen with this whole adventure, and to try and therefore set goals for October and November, that just feels impossible. So I don't know exactly what this is going to look like. But if you're a person for whom this feels like a good fit, come and join us, and we can explore it together. And together we can reclaim what it means to be Christian in the 21st century. So theleagueofbrilliance.com is where you want to go. In the meantime, thank you for listening. As ever, it's been my pleasure to share this with you. I look forward to catching up with you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.